Hi, Sebastian.
Hello.
So how do I pronounce your name correctly? Is it Sebastian?
It is, yes.
Perfect.
Hello.
Hi, Jan. Hi, Travis. So, was I no Sage wanted to join too?
Yeah, after our Ceph um, or drive groups discussion on Friday, it sounded like there he is.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, let's kick off. Um, yeah, first things first. We have a IC channel, Ceph orchestrators. I would propose to use it a bit more often. We have the opportunity to do that, and just let's make use of it. On Friday, we had a discussion about drive groups in the container huddle, which was not the right forum to discuss the pull request. I think Joshua doesn't really have time, but I think Jan is here. So I think let's just continue with the discussion and see if we can come to a conclusion. So on Friday, we had I think 4 points that were still open. One point that was about if we need some global information to convert drive groups into actual Ceph volume command lines. I think Sage and Sebastian Hahn, you had a discussion about that one a few months ago.
Yes. Was long ago, I guess. But yeah. Yeah,
So
like a year or something. But
the deep implementation does not need global information and can just create the drive groups parameters on a single host. The question is, can we keep it that way, or in which case do we need some global information?
I guess the idea was that if you deploy a Ceph cluster, then at some point you might want to have nodes that are uniformed. And if you don't, then it's probably I mean, I'm not going to say it's a bad idea, but if you have nodes that are not uniformed with different disks, different type of disks, and basically everything's a mess, then you're not going to have a very performant cluster. So I guess the idea was to do the selection across all the hosts of the platform and then just report something that will be uniformed across all the machines. So we wouldn't really allow to have machines with more disks or a different setup unless they, I guess, goes. But if they don't, then it's probably something we should try to avoid. Otherwise, people might not be very satisfied, I think, with what they will be getting out of that cluster.
Hmm.
Yeah, I guess that was the reasoning behind that global information.
Yeah. At least in DCD account implementation works, but just, or if you're using all spinner disk for your data devices and all your SSDs for your DB devices, then it does not really matter where you're calculating these selections from, or on which. So then you don't need some global information.
I think it's not so much whether you need it, it's whether it's useful to avoid getting, like if you just have a drive group that's like use all hard disks and create OSDs out of them, and you deploy it across a bunch of nodes, and some nodes have like a broken disk or whatever, you won't notice because they're all locally making different decisions. But if you define the drive group as saying, I want exactly 7 hard drives of this vendor and this size, then it'll work, right? Well, it'll work in the sense that one of those drive groups will fail. I guess I'm not really sure what the feedback is, but I think that was if I understood the original motivation, that was the idea, right? You want you want some feedback if you have uniform hosts, but then one of them isn't actually uniform.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's kind of sort of a validation as well.
Yeah. But it seems like you can do that without, regardless of how the drive group is actually being applied, like you can do that just by inspecting all the nodes. You can tell if they're not uniform. Or you can inspect all the nodes, figure out what the least common denominator is or whatever, and then apply that globally.
Yeah, but for this, you have to have this tool which has the global view of all the disks and do the decision, and then pass that info around maybe the drive groups. And that's, I guess, the missing piece at this point.
Yeah.
I guess we all agree about how things are going to be handled locally by Ceph volume via, I guess, drive groups. But it's more the collection, the analysis, and then the decision making that is missing.
But I would probably argue that this should be handled a layer above those drive groups even, because I mean you can easily have a global concept of, okay, I want 9 OSDs, and then create the drive groups accordingly and then send them out. Otherwise, that would be hard to press into this drive group concept.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to me like the real question initially is just whether the drive group meta description should be done at the Ceph volume layer or above the orchestrator.
Yep.
Now, my only concern there is, I think the SSH orchestrator is probably like the illustrative example. Is there something that we need to implement in order to pass those drive group descriptions through in the SSH orchestrator, or is choosing to put it in Ceph volume basically adding a burden into the orchestrator implementations?
Adding that to Ceph volume would make the SSH orchestrator easier. If you can just pass through the drive groups to Ceph volume, and Ceph volume does the rest.
I mean, wouldn't the same be true if you're just passing through a Ceph volume command line or something like that also?
Does not really matter. Yeah. But
I think the advantage of using a drive group there is just that it's I think, much easier to understand for a human user. If some debugging happens in there, you can look, oh, okay, I want, I don't know, 5 drives on this particular host be used for this drive group. Much easier than have like dash data devices, a bunch of drives, and then you've got to figure out which one is the actual drive, because we all know about device paths, right?
Well, so what is the what's the intended CLI experience supposed to look like for the orchestrator if you're going to define a drive group? Do you like do a dash I and give it a bunch the YAML JSON description? Or?
Yeah, it's like Ceph Orchestrator OSD create -I and then a YAML drive group. And that passes on that drive group to the volume and that host, and the volume does the rest.
And if you say create 7 OSDs or use these 7 hard disks, create OSDs on them, and there are only 6 drives available, what would happen? Is it going to create 6 out of 7? Or is it just going to error out and do nothing?
I think Ceph volume goes out and creates all of those. The batch command currently does, and then fails on the last one, I want to say. I'd have to look at the code.
I mean,
But
what
this
should
will
it
be,
do, I guess?
yeah, and this is handled at the Ceph volume level. I mean, we can do whatever we want, right?
Yeah.
And also, like, do some validation beforehand and come back with an error.
And you can write a group specification that's like create n, use these n devices, or you can write a description that is like use any device that matches this filter. Can you do all those things?
Yeah, we have a bunch of filters and then a limiting filter as well that we can actually just say do n devices that match this filter.
Okay.
Then with DeepC, do you write like each group for each host, like by hand? Who is doing then? Who's processing and who is actually writing the rule for each node?
Right. So the intended workflow in DeepC is we basically pass the inventory command to the user as well, so they can run inventory across all nodes. And I mean, normally a user has a rough idea of how their nodes look. And basically, I mean, in the simplest case, you have all uniform nodes. You write one drive group, and that's it, right? You have like one type of OSD, and basically, conceptually, drive groups are supposed to map to like the types of OSDs that you want. So you might want some standalone. You might want some that have external WALDBs. You might want some that are encrypted, and that basically is supposed to make up a drive group. It gets more complicated when you start thinking about, okay, I only want 14 of those, but I think the rough mapping still is valid.
So in the drive group in the outer layers, on the orchestrator layer, has a target specification that has a where you can define on which hosts that drive group is supposed to match or to be applied.
So, Jan, is the intention to implement this primarily for DeepC? Is that the goal, or is the goal?
Well, we have it in DeepC already. We have it in DeepC right now, and we basically we analyze those drive groups, match that to our inventory, and then pass out a huge Ceph volume command. And since there is some interest in, the orchestrators also picking up that concept, it would make sense to make Ceph volume aware of it a little more formalized.
Okay. I guess my primary concern is not concern. My goal, hope, whatever, is that this year we get as much of this surfaced for the SSH orchestrator case and the rook case.
Yeah.
I'm less interested in the Ansible and Deep C ones, except as far as we need them just to like be a bridge. But
yeah, the
mean,
pull request is dedicated for Rook and Deep C and not Rook and SSH orchestrator and not really for Deep C.
okay.
Yeah, and the way I see this is, I mean, to a degree, all of the components that implement orchestrator stuff have this issue, right? How to specify what OSDs you want in a sane fashion. Putting this into Ceph volume, I see this mostly as just another interface to the batch command. I mean, we're not going to get rid of the command line flags. If some implementation rather uses that, fine. But we can also just put a whole lot of this code, and that's mostly the stuff that only needs local knowledge. We might as well put this in Ceph volume and have that available to everyone.
Okay.
It's also handy for debugging a drive group on a specific host.
Yeah.
Without actually applying it.
Well, it sounds pretty reasonable to me. Are there lingering objections from anyone here, or?
So I think it's fine to add this new knowledge to Ceph volume.
Maybe just a question for me to make sure I'm clear. So the drive groups ultimately are a more advanced way to specify some batch mode for what we configure locally on a node, right? And Ceph volume owns what we configure locally on a node for OSDs. So I think it makes sense if we need this flexibility for this more advanced mode to have those settings in Ceph volume. But I think it sounds good.
Yeah. I also feel like it comes down to who's doing the work, a lot of it. So if you guys are the ones who are building it and this is how you want to build it, then like, great.
All right,
Yeah, perfect.
and I'll work with Joshua in polishing up that RFC PR then, and we'll work on a example and stuff, I guess.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool.
Okay.
Great.
Good.
Okay. In the container huddle, we also talked about that Rook does not yet provide the volume inventory to the orchestrator.
Right, it's just a separate discovery and where it stores the device names in the config map, and then the orchestrator module loads it from there. It's it would be better to do it with Ceph volume, sure.
But I think it's we already discussed that, and I think Blaine's gonna pick this one.
Oh, awesome.
I'm assuming based on the discussions we had when it comes to just refactoring the way we bootstrap OSDs and deprecating old-fashioned OSDs from Rook too. So that's one step. That's an initial step to go there.
Oh, that's great. Is there anything else in that whole topic about drive group, Ceph volume, and Rook? No. Perfect.
No, but I think it would be nice to keep in mind that this is still missing the big picture. Like, what is the entity that aggregates all the inventories and just generates like a drive group based on that and distributes it to all the nodes according to rules that have been given by administrators. That is still actually missing. It's being done manually. That's, I think.
Yeah. When we talked about this at Mount Point, I think there was a pad where we just like sketched out like what the CLI could look like, or the interface could look like through that, but I couldn't find it.
I think we have 2 documents. I'll look at them.
Yeah, can figure it out.
Yeah.
So at least my idea is that we have a set of drive groups that we, in general, just pass on to the orchestrator, and that will just pass these drive groups on to Ceph volume, which applies these drive groups. That's at least my big picture. Plus some validation stuff to make sure that your nodes are uniform.
Yeah, but I think the idea is not to do this per host, but just apply like one pattern, because we know that hosts are normally they should be uniformed, and the configuration should be identical.
Yeah.
But because we know that there should be only a single drive group, that's the easiest case, and this is the one I guess we should be aiming for. But then we're still missing the interface that actually describes that and can actually apply it to all the nodes. But we can follow up later on this. I will look for the documents and give access, and then you can, I guess, comment on it.
Yeah, have a look at Ceph Orchestrator OSD create, -i.
Okay.
Sage, you proposed some kind of daily huddle or schedule another meeting?
I was just asking. I haven't been following, so I wasn't sure where the daily coordination was happening. But I guess there's this Monday meeting and there's another one on Wednesday. So
Yeah.
I think it's up to you guys, whatever you need. No, I wouldn't create more meetings on Academy.
Several of us are talking daily in the Rook upstream meeting, at least.
Yeah.
But I know not everybody is on that, so.
And yes, the SSH orchestrator will also use containers, so the container huddle is also actually not that bad to also discuss the SSH orchestrator then.
Yeah.
At least from a name perspective. Okay, makes sense. So Kiefer created some work on integrating the orchestrator into the dashboard, and turns out that everything is too slow for the dashboard, including the Rook orchestrator. So we have to speed it up. Thankfully, Paul Kasner approached me with some kind of synchronization between the Kubernetes API and synchronizing that with an in-memory representation in the Rook orchestrator module. And my idea is just to make use of it as some kind of performance enhancement for caching inside of the Rook orchestrator module to make it usable for the dashboard.
Can you expand on what scenario is too slow too? Like, was there some specific scenario, or in general it's slow?
I think in general it's slow. Everything directly goes to the Kubernetes API. And
You're frozen.
basically.
Can you say it again?
Everything that's not really extremely fast is too slow for the dashboard. Because the request goes from the browser to the Ceph Manager daemon, and then to the Kubernetes API, then back to the Ceph Manager daemon, and then back to the browser. And within the Ceph Manager, we have to return really fast.
But does the dashboard use synchronous operations right now, or I would
Yes.
think that
Everything is synchronous.
Wherever we do any sort of operation that changes configuration, I would hope we could use asynchronous operations from the dashboard. Otherwise, it could take some time to go configure an OSD or whatever.
It's more like the read requests. Show me your services or give me the inventory is too slow.
Oh, everything is too slow.
Yeah. So, and the Kubernetes API provides these watchers that are based on resource versions. And if we just make use of them, then that will speed up the Rook orchestrator module.
So you're saying if we query things and then add a watch, and every time it's updated, then the module just stays up to date.
Yes.
Then we won't need to go to the KDS API for.
Yeah. So we can update the in-memory cache independent of the queries from the dashboard.
Great. And hopefully we only need to optimize some things, but just for getting information about the cluster.
Yeah, I think the inventory is important, and the getting all the pods is important for basic dashboard integration. And maybe the hosts, so node ls, get nodes.
Yeah, makes sense.
And we need some kind of introspection into the orchestrator API, because not every orchestrator implements everything, and we have to inform the UI which orchestrator actually implements what. That's on the list. Yeah, and that's everything I have for today.
I have a quick question. Have you done anything on the Ceph daemon tool yet? Or is it just an idea at this point?
Do we have that Ceph Python common library? And the Ceph daemon tool would be just a binary or a CLI for stuff implemented in the Ceph daemon tool. The Ceph daemon tool would be a CLI for stuff implemented in the Ceph common Python library.
What else would you use the things that Ceph daemon tool would use?
Nothing more, actually.
Yeah. Okay.
That's only about stuff that can be implemented locally. Everything else should live in the orchestrator.
Okay. I might start fiddling with that. was going to take a look at the Ceph Ansible code and how it's setting up the system units to run the containers currently, and then just see exactly what's involved.
I think the first step would be just to bootstrap a cluster.
Yeah, right. Well, it'll be like, yeah, exactly. Create a monitor and
Create a
create
monitor and a manager,
container to
and
run it.
then
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that would be the next step.
Okay. All right.
Travis, update from Rook.
Yeah, just a few quick things. So just as a note, 1.0.4 was released on Friday. There's critical RGW fix using the correct options with Beast that Sebastian got ready. So that's out there. And thinking about the 1.1 release, so the current proposal that we're going to bring up in the community meeting tomorrow is that the Rook community meeting mid-August is, I think, the date for feature complete we'd like to shoot for, and then end of August, 1.1 release. I think that that would give us roughly the quarterly cadence, or just over 3 months, 1.0 release. I think that's a good target to shoot for. Plenty of work that we want to happen in that release for sure, and a lot going on. We can tie things up in the next month. And then one thing to note for the minimum Ceph version, I think we said in the 1.0 release that that was the last release where we support Luminous. So I opened a PR this weekend for setting the minimum Ceph version to mimic 13.2.4 is what I proposed in the PR. That gives us Ceph volume support so that all new Blue Store OSDs being created would be using Ceph volume. No more of our old partitioning scheme for Rook was my goal with that minimum version.
How many users are actually on Mimic compared to Luminous and Nautilus?
But at this point, since 1.0 release, I get the impression that, really people are moving to Nautilus. I don't know, there's lots of people probably still on Luminous or Mimic until we force them to upgrade. But anyway, that's a good question. Forcing them to Nautilus maybe a bit soon with 1.1.
Maybe a bit early forcing them to Nautilus.
But at least forcing them off Luminous and making sure we're on Ceph volume at the same time. New OSDs. We still need to support the existing OSDs, of course, without requiring some data migration. Anyway, new OSDs all on Ceph volume. Any other thoughts around a good minimum version there, or does that? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's nice to do it this way, so we really encourage people upgrading clusters too. This is something we have been doing pretty well, I think, for the past years. So we should continue to. It seems that we never actually had any major issues with upgrades, so we should really encourage people upgrading clusters.
Okay. I'll propose that minimum version in the Rook community meeting tomorrow as well. And
yeah, I was thinking about the dev freeze. So we are aiming a release at beginning of September, right?
Mm-hmm. End of August, start of September. There.
Okay. Because I was just thinking that because it's like summer break, a couple of people is gonna go on PTO. So if we freeze a half August, then people might not really have time wrapping up their patches, I think. So perhaps freezing beginning of September and then releasing half September, something like this. could give people more time polishing their PRs, and because people obviously are going to take PTOs during summer, I think.
Yeah, August is a big PTO month. And that should work too, I think. Yeah, so let's talk about that tomorrow in the community meeting.
Okay, because it's not only about the code, but also the reviews. So if we have less reviewers as well, then we might not be able to get all the patches we want before dev freeze.
Yep. Good point. The realistic view of releasing.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other features or questions about Rook people want to bring up? Okay. All I had then.
Okay. Anything else? 3, 2, 1.
Thanks,
See you
everyone.
on Wednesday or next week.
Have a good week.
Yep.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Talk to you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
See everyone.